Testing, 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 testing.
It's almost time. All right, good morning. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting. And if you would please stand and join me in American saluting our flag that will be led this morning by Supervisor Vanderpool. Remain standing for a moment of silence.
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please be seated. First item up today is our Board of Supervisors matters. Turn to Supervisor Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things to go over. Last week, Happy Trails Horse Ranch in Tulare had a ribbon cutting for their Saputo Arena. They continue to grow and expand their programs and their offerings, and really do a wonderful job in the community and helping those that they do serve. And so I was really glad to be there on behalf of the board and welcome that new addition to the Happy Trails family. I did attend last Thursday with Supervisor Worthley the Drought Task Force meeting with Secretary of Food and Ag in California, Karen Ross. It was actually a good meeting, and very interesting to hear from the Department of Water Resources along with the Department of Food and Ag, and really try to figure out what the basis for their regulations going forward is. And there was a good representation of irrigation districts as well as elected officials and different departments there at that meeting. And definitely some good questions were asked, and I appreciate them reaching out to us, asking for our opinions and what we need to see in regulations going forward, or we would like to see. And I hope that she's actually going to be listening to the sentiment that was shared with her, because I think some important perspectives were presented. But I do appreciate her taking into consideration local opinions and realizing that one size doesn't fit all in California. Last Friday was the 9/11 blood drive. It was a fantastic event in Tulare, very well attended. I did give blood for the 7th time, and that's pretty darn good considering I'm scared of needles. But anyways, that went very well, and they actually had 22 pints more than they did last year. So each year that they have done it, it continues to grow and is very successful, and is the single largest event that the Central California Blood Bank has during a given year, so they very much look forward to it. Next, we have the Tulare County Fair Parade kicks off tomorrow. That's going to be a great event in Tulare, and also kicks off Tulare County's one and only fair. Mr. Ennis down there, Porterville Fair.
Second only to the Porterville Fair.
Okay, whatever. But anyways, I know they're really taking a new approach to the fair this year, and really excited to see how that is received within this county. Next, I have a Visalia Young Professionals panel discussion that I was asked to be involved with related to encouraging youth and young professionals within our community to get involved. So that's going to be a very good event. I'm looking forward to that. That's at Fresno Pacific University's Visalia campus this week. And then lastly, I just wanted to make mention, I know that it might not be as much on people's mind today since we were very fortunate to get a little bit of rain yesterday, but it really did kind of help to clean up the air a little bit. But I wanted to ask our chair, who sits on the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, what, if anything, the Air Pollution Control District needs from the county or could benefit from the county to help attain federal assistance or state emergency monies. I had a conversation with some constituents this weekend related to what we can do to help with the really poor air quality that we're dealing with because of forest fires, which we did not create, but we are definitely going to be responsible for the effects of. So I just will pose that question. That concludes my Board of Supervisors.
I can just respond real quickly to
Sure.
that. The forest fires or wildfires are considered extraordinary events which are above and beyond the control of the Air District. So the Air District's programs, which are aimed at generalized reductions in emissions, and actually our jurisdiction is limited to stationary sources. So there's not, I mean, these things still stay in effect when you have a wildfire, but for those programs, the wildfire situation, as bad as it would be even worse if we didn't have these controls in place. But the issue there, I believe, is preventative nature, not doing what we can do to prevent these types of catastrophic fires. And we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about the rough fire coming forward, so we'll have some more conversation about it. But it is quite frustrating in the sense that if we don't manage our forests, the wildfires that we're seeing today and have been seeing now for the last few years are just going to continue, and they're going to continue to be these large events, very expensive to try to maintain. And as we all know, the air quality was absolutely horrid here in the valley. If I were a person with any type of respiratory problem, I'd have been headed for the coast or something, because I mean, we do know that PM10, PM2.5 is actually a very carcinogenic and a very health impactful problem. People have heart attacks, people have asthma attacks, people die from too much PM, this particular matter. So it's a very serious problem. But as you say, it's not something which we can control. I do believe, however, that we need to work on this preventative aspect of it. I think as we have gone back for a number of years to Washington, D.C., talking about water projects for years on the raising the spillway, while that's still important, I think number one on our list these days is going to need to be forest management. Forest management, forest management. We've got to get back to managing our forests, because this is not fair to the people of San Joaquin Valley. So that's it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the response. I just want to make sure that we're doing what we can as a county to address it if we need any sort of declaration or anything now, especially that the fire's encroaching into Tulare County and it's going beyond just Fresno County. I just want to make sure that that's at the forefront of this board's mind.
Right. Supervisor Cox.
I'll continue. Those same constituents, I guess, had all of our phone numbers. I received phone calls as well. They actually suggested that, and I did talk to the CEO about declaring either a state of emergency or a state of disaster to bring in more federal funds. I don't know that there are any more firefighters or any more planes that can be brought in to work those fires, but those are things necessary to bring them under control. So I did receive the phone calls also. I'm concerned to ask our CEO to look into that. I think he's talked to Mr. Lockman about that, so we may receive a little bit of a update in that regards.
G. Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. Yeah, I did talk to Mr. Lockman yesterday. The disaster hasn't reached the point of us, justifying an emergency declaration at this time, but it's certainly something we're looking at, and if we can declare it and bring some additional resources, we will.
Well, my concern would be, let's not wait until we have people having heart attacks and dying to do that. Okay, I will continue then on with the few things I have here. Last Wednesday, we did have a regular retirement board meeting. It was very productive. Monday morning yesterday, I attended the City of Porterville's quarterly meeting with TCAG and talking about their transportation projects and the projects with TCAG in general. A very productive meeting, looking forward to the projects that they have moving at this time, and helping them realize that the projects that are working on now, the 4 major projects they're working on right now, we're actually on the next page of Measure R, so wouldn't be working on those for at least another 7 or 8 years now. So Measure R has been very successful there. This Wednesday, tomorrow afternoon, I have a APAC meeting, the Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee. Be attending that. Location has changed. This will be our second month in the RMA, the Resource Management Agency building. The room there is a lot more conducive to the discussions that we have. Smaller room, and we're able to get enough people in. So I have that tomorrow afternoon. Friday, we do have a First Five retreat where we'll be planning for the next 3 years how we'll be spending the First Five funding. And this coming Monday, I have a special announcement. We will have a Step Up Community Forum at Cafe 210 here in Visalia on the corner of Center and Locust. We have our sheriff will be talking about issues we're having throughout the county with gangs and what type of crime. We have 2 sergeants from the Visalia Police Department who will be discussing the youth services and their gang suppression activities in the city of Visalia. We have Chief Christy Meyer will be there talking about probation's efforts, specifically in regards to youth and to programming, and then also to the AB 109 program, how that's affecting Visalia. And then Allison Pierce from our staff will give a presentation also on what the Step Up community is doing. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair. And that, I failed to say, Monday night at 6:30 p.m., so we'll go from 6:30 until 7:30.
Very good. Supervisor Sheedy?
Yesterday I had a meeting with Susie Ward, who is the Reverend Susie Ward from the St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and she gave me this poster and let me know there's a ride starting in Modesto all the way down to Taft. They'll be coming through our area. The ride's between October 2nd to the 23rd. It's a tour against human trafficking, so if you see this sign, that's what it is. They will be in Porterville on October 8th. They'll be in Visalia on October 9th. And so if you see bike riders and you see some people gathering, that's what the event is. The last couple of weeks I've been on the highway and the road and airplanes. 2 weeks ago I was in Paradise, California for a Sierra Nevada Conservancy meeting. And we are about ready to roll out grant applications for watershed restoration in the Sierra Nevadas. So I would suggest people checking their website, Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and we believe that we'll probably by the end of the year be able to award some of the grants from Proposition 1 for watershed restoration. During that meeting, there was a very important chart that was put up, which was news to me, is that over 60% of the PM 2.5, the soot the supervisors have been talking about, that's generated from these forest fires, over 60% of it comes from forest fires. And I would believe in the last month, the people in the San Joaquin Valley have taken more PM 2.5 in their lungs in the last month than they probably had in the last 10 years because of the forest fires. So I think the government, the federal government, really needs to look at these forest fires as not only an asset, losing assets, but it's a tremendous health impact upon the people in the San Joaquin Valley. Last week, I was in Washington, D.C. with the San Joaquin Valley Policy Council, which is made up of the 8 Valley County transportation agencies. And we were lobbying for, obviously, Highway 99, Interstate 5, bridge program, and a transportation bill. We've been going back for about 7 years to Washington, D.C. because we always thought there was going to be a long-term transportation bill passed by the federal government. And we've even tried to schedule our trips to where we could address the transportation bill that was being considered. Here we are 7 years later, and we still don't have a transportation bill, a long-term transportation bill. The problem is they do not know or cannot agree on how to raise funds for transportation. And it doesn't look like we're going to make a lot of progress in the near future. They may pass a transportation bill to keep things going as they're going for a short period of time, but then we come back into the fact that the government runs out of funds because of the debt ceiling limitation, so that issue's coming. That'll take front burner, and so everything gets pushed back. We had a lot of conversation about water. We have the Feinstein bill, Feinstein-Boxer bill versus the Valadao bill. The Feinstein-Boxer bill has not been approved in the Senate. Apparently, they take two different approaches on solving the water issues in California, and it seems as though we may not see anything this year on water for California. Valadao seemed like he was willing to compromise quite a bit. I'm not sure on the Democrat, the Senate bill, if they're willing to compromise enough to make a deal. While I was in D.C., I had an interesting experience. I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I got evac'd out of the Golden Trout Wilderness by a Forest Service helicopter. Well, on September 11th, I went to lunch because I was going to meet with our county lobbyist whose office was a block away from Union Station. So I was downstairs in the food court at lunch, and unbeknownst to me, some idiot, well, I've got to back up. There was so much security at Union Station, it was unbelievable. But some idiot outside stabs his girlfriend, runs into Union Station, and they shoot him. And the gunshot went off, and everybody's heightened alert because of 9/11, and I've never seen so many people move so fast. That food court was absolutely packed, and it was empty in probably about a minute. People hit the exit. Well, I was on the side part I wasn't in the main food court, but on the side, and we had an easy access exit. So I went out when I saw it was just like a wave of people. I went out, and I remembered I left my iPad on the table. So I went back in after a couple minutes, grabbed my iPad, and the whole building was empty on the bottom. So I said, well, I might as well finish my lunch.
Priorities are priorities.
And then the police removed me after a while. So Friday I have a meeting in Merced about the San Joaquin Valley arm of Amtrak that we took over a couple months ago. And that's all I have.
You're probably on the watch list now. Okay, Supervisor Ennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, we had an opportunity to go out and meet at Set and Pistachio, and in that group was Mike Washington, Eric Coyne, Gene Rousseau. We had Katerina and Carria from Economic Development with us, and had a good tour of Set and Pistachio, and this business is continuing to grow in Terabella. They're buying everything up around them that they can get. They bought all the old Art Coulter Trucking Company land. They own everything from the Set and Pistachio all the way to Highway 65 now. They're buying up old abandoned apartment houses and tearing them down. They're going to tear down the old grain elevator there. They did a land swap with Porterville Citrus so that they could square up their properties. They're wanting to expand their park out there that they've already built for the community. So what a great organization that is and what they're doing. It was quite a tour too to see the raw product come in, be dumped out of the trucks, watch it go through the process, and then into the different bags that it's distributed out throughout the country. And of course, they were bagging pistachios that day, which were actually going to Canada for Costco. So it was had the Kirkland brand on it. So you can see they're a big company. They're worldwide, actually. So great deal to have in Terabella. When we left there, we went down to Sierra Forest Products and met with Kent and Larry Dewson and talked to them about the logging industry and how they are. And they said their problem right now is that they've got more logs than they have place to put them. And that's never been in the past. But the biggest problem they got is keeping them wet. With the water shortage, it's hard to keep those logs. They got to keep them wet. That's why they used to have the old mill ponds where they run the logs into to keep them wet so they could saw them up. So two great businesses in Terabella, that little community, creating a lot of jobs out there. I think Setting Pistachio works well over 600 to 700 people through the harvest. And I don't know what the Sierra Forest Products is running, probably, I'm going to say 200 people. But both businesses doing very well, and our concern was to go meet with them, see if we could help them in any way, be in the county, to keep moving forward, keep creating jobs, and keep being in business in that area. So it was a great deal. Tomorrow I'll be going to the parade for the Little Fair in Tulare, and we'll try to support that. And then right after that, I have a Workforce Investment Board meeting. That'll be in Porterville. And I'm glad to see that you gave blood, Pete. I thought you were looking a little anemic, but you look all right now that you said you give blood. So
Thanks, Mike.
And we continue to watch that rough fire. That thing grew by leaps and bounds. And Supervisor Worthy was telling me yesterday that they probably could have put it out in the first day that it started, but they decided, well, let's just wait and see. Maybe we can do some burning on the ground or something. But it didn't work out so well. But for those big three fires we got going, that's well over 200, 300, about 300,000 acres of timber we've lost. And there's no reforestation project. There's nothing to go back in. When those burn, they burn. Whatever comes up is what the birds bring in. It's usually just brush. So we're losing timber, and we're losing a valuable asset to this state every day. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Last Thursday, I represented the board at the CSEC Board of Directors meeting. Lots of things going on because it was at the end of the session, and so many of the things that they were talking about were still in process of being worked out across the street. We did a very interesting presentation on transportation, the needs of California, the costs associated with it, different concepts of how to go forward. A very interesting thing about driverless cars. I mean, the latest thing has been now that it's been agreed between the auto industries and the federal government to put on a system where a braking system. So if your car will be able to acknowledge when there's something ahead of it that's stopped. If it will warn you. If you don't react, it will react for you. And as was pointed out, this is the first time we've actually looked at this type of an approach to traveling. Up until now, it's been kind of how do we keep people safe inside their cars in case of a crash. So we have safety airbags and all that sort of thing. This is preventative. This is the idea of preventing those rear-enders from happening. Anyway, so it's amazing how we're moving forward with this technology, and it's not pie in the sky. It's not way in the future. It's really right around the corner, and so get ready for watching cars drive by you with nobody in the driver's seat or something. It's going to be kind of strange. Just to follow up a little bit on what Pete was talking about, that meeting we had with the Secretary of Agriculture, their big concern was it's a drought task force, but their major concern was on subsidence. And they started off the presentation by saying, the state has some vested interest in subsidence issues, and they talked about the California aqueduct, they talked about a few things, but they never mentioned high-speed rail. And when you looked at the map that they presented, guess what? The route of the high-speed rail goes right through some of the big subsidence areas of Central California. And I raised that, and they were very quick to say, well, that's got nothing to do with it. But honestly, I think that has everything to do with it. I think they're concerned about constructing a high-speed rail where they have a subsidence issue, because how do you do that and then deal with subsidence? Anyway, I think they were looking for projects that maybe could deal with that. And there was a situation up in El Nido, north of us in Merced County, where they had a subsidence issue. They everybody came together with a project that they think will help to deal with it. So they were looking for that sort of thing down here. Are there projects that can deal with subsidence issues? And of course, the big thing is we need surface water. You're going to have water to provide for agriculture, so they don't have to pump so much out of the ground or replenish the water in the ground, so that we don't have subsidence. But I thought that was kind of a very, very interesting meeting. Saturday, I had a meeting with supervisors from Merced, Fresno, Kings, Tulare, and Madera County. Gene was present, the CAOs were present from those counties, and 2 supervisors from each of the counties, or 1 in my case, because Alan was unable to be there. The issue was the creation of a JPA for purposes of being able to submit a project application before the state of California, so we can attempt to receive funding from the water bond that was passed by the voters of California. And the issue was, right now we don't have an entity to do that, and there has to be a governmental entity step forward to make this plan presentation and request in order to receive funding. So the question was how to make it. What should the makeup of this board be, this JPA? And we came to, I thought, a very good solution, which is going to be the 5 counties will each have a representative. There will be a representative from the irrigation districts, a representative from the cities, a representative from the community services district, and an at-large member selected by the group. And so it was a very, very productive meeting. It broadens the breadth of the group, so we're not just counties. This also, shows that the need that we're looking at disadvantaged communities, we're looking at our cities, we're looking at agriculture. And so I thought that was a very, very productive meeting. And although Supervisor Sheeta was not there, his presence was noted because a lot of the counties were sort of teed up to go along with this concept, because Fresno really wanted to advance the idea of let's just go forward with counties only. And we felt it was very important that we show a breadth of interest from other governmental agencies. This Thursday will be an air board meeting in Fresno. I'll be there. I'm sure they'll be reporting on the air quality that's resulting from this fire. This has been an issue before the air board for some time. They go back to Sacramento again with this in mind, that we need to manage our forests. And as I was telling, the rough fire began with a lightning strike. It began on the Sierra side of it was Sierra National Forest, not on the Sequoia. Of course, it's lopped off about 60,000 acres, I think now. The Sequoia has been engaged in this fire. But when we had met earlier with the Forest Service and the Park Service and CAL FIRE up at Pinehurst back in the spring, when the concern was about all the dying timber, the forest manager for the Sequoia said their approach was going to be any fire that happened this year was going to be immediately extinguished because of the great risk involved. There's so much dead and dying timber out there and brush and grass that the risk is so high of catastrophic fire that it was going to immediately be attacked. I guess the memo didn't get to the Sierra, or I'm not sure exactly what happened, but this was a lightning-caused strike that could have been addressed early on. It was not. It was allowed to just sort of grow, and then, of course, now we're up over 140,000 acres. I personally went up. We have a small cabin up above Pinehurst. Went up to took a few mementos out of the cabin because I didn't know on Friday whether the cabin would be there on Saturday. It appears they've been able to stop the fire north of Sequoia Lake and north of Highway 180 by doing a significant amount of back burning. And the weather's been helpful and cooperative as well. So we're hopeful that this fire, it's continued to burn to the west towards Pine Flat, but hopefully it's been resolved. Because if it got across the 180, it would be right down to Dunlap, and you have a lot of homes and residences down there that would have been affected by it. So this has been a catastrophic fire. Over $78 million, that was several days ago, had been spent fighting this fire. I'm sure we'll be over $100 million before it's done, and then there's a lot of money spent then trying to repair the damage. If we have the kind of rainfall and snowfall we're expecting this year, that could have significant impacts on the drainage of the Kings River, what will be flowing into Pine Flat Lake, and so forth. So very, very serious situation, not only with the air quality, but water issues and timber and everything else. So that's what I have to report for today.
Supervisor Worthley, in the Sequoia Forest, the cabin fire was started by a lightning strike on 2 trees, but because of forest policy, the hotshot crews weren't able to use chainsaws to cut those trees down and put that fire out. And it grew to be over 40,000 acres. So there's some
We
There's
are.
some management issues.
There's some lunacy issues. I mean, common sense just seems to have gone out the window, so. Oh, one last thing. I got a call this morning from the sheriff's office. I thought this was interesting. He's on his way to an event this morning, couldn't be here. But they served 9 search warrants in Seville against pot-growing activities. Guess what? They were using the emergency water that we provide for people for drinking was being used to water marijuana plants. So kudos to the sheriff's office for getting in the middle of that and bringing that to a halt. And we've had problems of overuse of the water system out there too, and this will also help that. So our problems are many, but we find ways to deal with them. Okay, that's enough of our time. We spent a lot of our time. Let's talk about public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board this morning on matters which are within our jurisdiction but not on today's agenda are welcome to come forward. Please give us your name and address, and we'll give you a grand total of 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Susanna Aguilera Marrero, 2788 Isham Creek Court in Tulare, California. I'm here on behalf of the Tulare County for Family, where our mission is Tulare County for Families, where we promote the preservation of the family unit by empowering families through education and promoting an environment that fosters civic engagement and productive citizenship, valuing the contribution of the immigration population, advocating for all families to be treated with dignity and respect, promoting the general welfare of all members of our community. I have a flyer here because on October 3rd, during Hispanic Heritage Month, Tulare County for Families will be hosting an educational event. It's going to be Tulare County History Revisited from 1964 through 1969. We would like to partner up with your agency. We are with several agencies in our community. It's going to be at Visalia at the Rotary Theater, and the event will feature and highlight significant social events that are incidents that occurred in the Tulare County, such as the Vaceto program, the strikes over at the Woodville labor camp. This is our attempt to also encourage the participation of the youth, not only to set up, but to be a positive social change and empowerment. We look to challenge and inspire our new and upcoming teachers, poets, engineers, lawyers, doctors, organizers, nurses, activists. We want this event to be an educational piece in the program, so we encourage everyone to come and participate. I have some flyers here again for you to take a look at. It is going to be our inaugural, so we will be doing this in the years to follow as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I think that my time is almost up.
Did a good job. Thank you.
And the remainder of the flyers here for anybody who wishes to take them and participate as well.
Very
Thanks
good.
again.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Chairman Borley, board members, staff, and audience. My name is Vincent Salinas. I reside at 1247 East Centerview Avenue, Esteta, California. And I would like to inform you that I filed my 501, my 410, my intentions to run for Tulare County Board of Supervisors, District 1. And I hope I have an opportunity to meet each and every one of you in the months to come, and also staff. So thank you, and best wishes to those who are running again and those who are challenged, those who are running. Thank you.
And those retiring.
Well, those that are retired don't have to worry about anything.
PM 10. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Board members, Jose Segala with SEIU 1811 West Sunnyside Avenue. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Cox, Supervisor Cox, for joining with us and a number of our members at a work site. We had a good lunch, productive lunch, to talk about a number of issues. I really appreciate him taking the time to join with us. I hope that this is an opportunity for us to continue to collaborate on working to address worksite issues, whether it's not functioning bathrooms or non-secure workplaces. I think this was a great opportunity. The members were very excited to have you there, Mr. Cox, and to be able to share directly with you some of these concerns. We hope to be able to do that with other members. I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of worksite issues that happen around the county, as you well know, and I know Mr. Cox a few years ago, I believe, worked on trying to address those, and I hope that this time around we can work together to put that word out, whether it's something as simple as was stated the other day of putting up a barrier so people won't see you when you're using the bathroom, in some work sites. So simple things like that go a long way with our members. So wanted just to take this opportunity in a positive light and thank you, Mr. Cox, and invite all of you, the rest of you, to join with us. And we set up these worksite lunches, worksite meetings, and excuse me, you can meet directly with our members and hear from them on their issues. So just wanted to take that opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Norman, you have a little update for us on where our firefighters are?
Absolutely.
So they're not missing an action.
No, definitely not. Good morning, Honorable Chair, member of the board. Chief Garcia and Chief Smith have impeccable timing. Chief Garcia is on a cruise, and Chief Smith is in South Dakota picking up some new fire apparatus. So you get me this morning. Currently, to date, the rough fires consumed over 143,000 acres, and we're showing a price tag on it of about $89 million. It's roughly 40% contained at this point. Current county resources we have approximately 30 personnel up there, 2 battalion chiefs, 6 captains, 12 lieutenants, and 14 firefighting personnel. Over the last few days, they've made a pretty good stop at it on McKenzie Ridge. We do have approximately 12 square miles of impingement just below the monument into Tulare County. Rain, precipitation, obviously very welcome with the fire, but it does impair our backfiring operations with the moisture of the 10-hour fuel. Some of the lighter dry brush and grass is harder to ignite, and it creates some tactics for us. We have had 3 different tours with our OES rigs, with our state OES engines. We've had a lot of people up there. Throughout the duration of the incident, we've had approximately 70 people committed through various rotations. We also had an overhead request for the Valley Fire in Lake County that came in late last night. So they're making good progress on this. Strategy and tactics with the federal agencies is a little bit different than what we do in Tulare County as well as CAL FIRE, but they are making some good headway on that.
I saw the numbers. I think they're up to almost 4,000 people on this fire now. Or?
I think it was just under 4,300. Yes.
Yeah, that's a big jump. Any word on the Butte fire?
The Butte fire's still growing. It seems to be in a populated area, but still working to get that under control. And
that was a little bit deceiving because I thought Butte fire, I thought Butte County, but it's actually Calaveras County and
Amador.
And Inyo. Yeah. So it's anyway, it's another serious fire.
Yes, it is.
California's on fire. So,
Mr. Chair, if I can, you said we've had 70 personnel rotating. How long are the rotations? When they're called up to go work this fire? How long are they there before they come back, Charlie?
Normally,
it's a sense of that work.
Normally, it's 14 days. We can get extended, obviously, if there's significant circumstances, but we like to keep everybody at 14 days for the CFAA and mutual aid agreement. So that way, we can keep them sharp and we don't get people injured.
Good. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, as of 2 weeks ago, during our Sierra Nevada Conservancy meeting, the government has spent over $1.2 billion in fire suppression.
Which government?
This federal government, year to date.
Okay,
that's before the Butte fire, before the Napa fire, and the continuing of the Rough fire. So if they would spend half that money for forest restoration, I think we'd be a lot better off.
All right, we're going to move on here because we've used up a lot of time, but that's okay. It's been important information. So we'll move to our consent calendar. Item number 42 needs to be handled, pulled off and handled separately. Does somebody want to address the 42?
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to pull item number 24 as well.
All right. For separate consideration?
Yeah, just for comment.
Okay.
Please.
Anyone speaking to 42 this morning?
Gene Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. Adam Peck wasn't able to be here this morning. There are, council identified some deviations from the contract that was brought forward, and can you outline those deviations?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't anticipating doing this, so my computer is sitting here chugging. Your board has a contract protocol which allows for what we call contract streamlining to move forward. It allows the departments to bring a lot of contracts that are recurring contracts forward without review from our office, but they have to comply with certain conditions, and your board established these.
Council?
Yes.
We have a lot on the agenda
I
today.
realize
So what
that
I
you
think
do.
we'll do is we'll just pull this off, and it's not like it's an emergency. This is retroactive.
It's a retroactive
So
thing.
we
We
can
can
bring
continue
this
it
up
1
in the
week if you would
future,
prefer it.
and we can have the director here to speak to it. next
If
month.
your
We'll just
board
take it
would
off the calendar
prefer,
today.
we could take it
Yeah.
next week.
Okay, let's take on the item 24.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just thought we would pull this for separate consideration. I know we were going to talk about it the last time after we had the San Joaquin Valley Insurance Authority meeting. This is the adoption of the renewal rates for our employees and for the plan for the San Joaquin Valley Insurance Authority. Actually, again, this is a great, it's actually a great item because we continue to beat the trend of healthcare increases for public sector entities and private sector entities. We're doing very, very well in this organization. The overall increase for our PPO participants is going to be 4.9%, and the HMO participants rates will be increasing 11.71%. And this is a bit of a blending between different plans for the various entities who are participating. I had originally advocated for a no blending because of the trend of PPO increases. The actual PPO, if it was a standalone plan, would have only increased 0.8% this year. HMOs, on the other hand, would have increased about 18% or 19%. And that would have been a year-over-year increase. And that's a pretty stark difference. But in order to maintain the stability of the plan, the board did adopt, or the San Joaquin Valley Insurance Authority did adopt a blending of rates, and that resulted in the 4.9% increase. And I think if we continue to see the trend of HMO increases being far exceeding PPO increases, I think we will then get to a point where we are not going to be blending at all and making each plan bear their own cost and rewarding healthier employees for taking care of themselves as well. And so with that, I would just end my comments to that item, but I think it's important to highlight as it is a very important part of our employees' lives.
I appreciate your comment. And then to kind of make that complete, we did for the first time, instead of having a straight blending where everybody was the same,
Yeah, we did.
It was a 4.9% increase for the PPOs and an HMO rate increase of 11.71%. So we're making the HMO pay more of their share of it. Which, by the way, we say HMO, but it's actually our own authority's plan. So part of the deal here is we want to make sure we have stability, and that was part of the justification for what we did.
And I also think, Mr. Chair, if you would let me add to that, I want to make sure that it's important that people also know for those employees that we have who participate in the Kaiser plans, the increase is 7.75%. For the PPO plan for dental, it's actually a decrease of 4.11%. And then for the vision, it's a 0% increase. So again, we are beating the trend and doing very, very well. So,
all right, very good. Mr. Segal, do you want to comment on that or something else on that?
Comment on this item. Jose Segala. I just wanted to I've had the opportunity to attend a meeting of the working group here in the county representing SEIU, and wanted just to thank Ms. Solstrom for helping us work through those issues, through understanding them. These increases and the impacts it could or could not have on the employees, but I really wanted to also just give kudos to the staff for really investing in our workers. As you well know, Mr. Vanderpool and other members, there is an incentive program for our employees to sort of live a healthy lifestyle, get in shape, and in other words, feel good about themselves through the different incentives that the county has available to them in terms of weighing in, and then weighing in at a time later. And if they're doing well in terms of reducing some of their issues or addressing their concerns, they get a bonus. Everybody likes to have a cash bonus. It's a good thing to have as part of something that you do. So I wanted just to thank the county leadership in addition to what you're doing to try to maintain these rates down. But the work and the investment that you put into your county employees has gone a long way. I've gone out to the work sites and have talked to a lot of our members who are very happy with that program, and they're out there walking. They're out there doing their best to try to meet those goals. So I just wanted to thank you guys and bring that program to highlight that program so that the public knows that the county is working with our members to try to deal with their health issues. So thank you.
Well, the wellness program is a major part of our efforts, and even more importantly, we have people who, through these screenings, have found out they have very serious health conditions that without the screenings they would not know about. So it's been a very successful program, and a lot more to be done because a lot of folks are not availing themselves of the opportunity to do that. All right, I would entertain a motion. Anybody else wishing to address matters on our consent calendar, which we haven't taken up and talked about yet? If not,
Sure. Motion to approve items 4 through 41, 42 being pulled for later.
I'll second that,
Consideration
Mr.
later.
motion by Supervisor Cox, seconded by Supervisor Vanderpool. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. We will now take up our timed item, which is a public hearing on the budget hearings.
It's set for 10 o'clock.
Sorry?
It's set for 10
Oh,
o'clock.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. We have a few more minutes, so we will continue on with our untimed item. So our untimed items begin with 43, request from Resource Management Agency to approve the general plan initiation number 15-003.
Good morning, Chairman. Mike Washington, Tulare County RMA. I have a very brief report for this project. This is for self-help enterprises for Goshen Village East a vesting tentative subdivision map TM 835. This is going to be a three-phased, 100% affordable housing project that will further the goals of the Tulare County housing element. First phase is in the light green. It will include up to between 100 to 140 multifamily units, and it will include also down to the down here a ponding basin that will be the storm retention basin for the entire project. Phase 2 will be single-family units here in the light yellow, which is 47 individual lots ranging from size from 4,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. Phase 3 will again be approximately 42 lots, single-family residence, same lot sizes, with the addition of a small park here. Now we've been cooperating and collaborating with the city of Visalia as well with self-help. There's pursuant to discussions between the three parties, it's agreed that Phase 4 and Phase 5 are eliminated from this track map, and that self-help will process a tentative map on the remainder parcel at some future later date. What is proposed eventually is this was proposed as this is proposed Phase 4, which is again another multifamily similar mirroring this one up to 140 units, and this was for commercial development, general commercial development on this site. But again, it's agreed that this will be a remainder parcel and will be developed at some future point. That concludes staff report.
And Mr. Washington, I know there was issues with the city of Visalia. These changes satisfied their concerns?
Yes, we received an email last night confirming that the city is fine with it proposed this way.
Any questions by board members? Is there anyone from the public wishing to address this matter? If not, we entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Ennis, seconded by Supervisor Ishida. Please cast your votes, and the votes are unanimous. We have two addendum items, items 1 and 2, that are we can handle. Those are also untimed items. And request from Health and Human Service Agency to ratify evacuation orders issued by the Director of Emergency Services for the Rough Fire. Morning, Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor, CEO, and Council, good morning. Andrew Lockman, your Emergency Services Manager. I just had a couple updates. You guys fairly well covered the rough fire this morning. I won't bore you with a full briefing on that. The latest number as of 6 a.m. this morning was $94.2 million expended on that fire. So that's the latest official number as of a few hours ago. You were asking about the number of acres burned in the Sequoia side. As of a couple days ago, they actually stopped reporting that number, but at that time it was over 48,000 acres in Sequoia National Forest. The item that you have in front of you is to ratify two evacuation orders this morning. These are largely perfunctory pro forma type orders. The first is a mandatory evacuation order of the Big Meadows area. Big Meadows actually had already been subject to a forest closure for over 2 weeks. However, as we're finding out, this is a very complicated piece of real estate under this fire. The Forest Service did not have the authority to issue evacuation orders for private property within the forest. They can close the forest, they can't order people to evacuate the private property they're in. So we had the authority, we were required to issue that order. We issued that order in support of the incident management team. The Sheriff's Department went through and swept and found that nobody is there because it had been closed for 2 weeks. So again, largely a perfunctory thing, but needed to make sure we did it the right way. Part two of the item in front of you was a evacuation warning, also known as a voluntary evacuation for the communities of Grant Grove, Wilsonia, and Weston. Weston kind of residing between Big Meadows and Grant Grove. Again, being a complicated piece of real estate, there were some jurisdictional questions. We wanted to make sure that we over-authorized and instead of under-authorizing and having a legal issue later. We came to find out the next morning that the federal entities confirmed that the National Park Service has exclusive federal jurisdiction in the Wilsonia area, and they own all of the property in the Grant Grove area. So Grant Grove and Wilsonia being covered by our orders was actually unnecessary. Again, it was making sure that we were overinsured, if you will, versus underinsured. So the only portion of that order that is currently still relevant is the evacuation warning for the Weston area. However, there's no modification needed to the orders at this time. Again, it's overcompensating versus undercompensating. So again, the item in front of you is to ratify those two orders, which were signed by the Director of Emergency Services, County Administrative Officer last Wednesday, as required by California law. That has to be ratified by the board within 7 days. The good news, per the briefing yesterday morning at 08:30, as to air quality and to the prognosis of the fire. I was up there on Thursday. It was, it's coming towards Dunlap, Miramonte. We're making our stand here on McKenzie Ridge. As of yesterday, it was, all right, we're successful. We're going to start ramping this thing down. Structure protection was actually removed out of Cedar Grove, Hume Lake, which are both on the Fresno County side, and Grant Grove last night. They were successful in bringing fire past the north end of Grant Grove and protecting the community and the monument there. So largely this is in a ramp down phase. Looking at the infrared this morning, whereas we were seeing hundreds of dots, hundreds of hot spots, and a couple days ago we're now seeing 0 along the perimeter of that fire. So again, we've surged a lot of resources up there as a state, as federal agencies. I believe what you're going to start seeing here in the next several days is a significant drawdown of that unless something changes. Air quality should continue to improve. Smoke production from the incident is declining and will continue to decline, and the weather favors it as such, going up and out into Nevada versus back down into our valley. So that's all I have on the fire. I'm happy to entertain any other questions. We did look at a local emergency. Last week we determined that it was not necessary for authority purposes because we already have a state of emergency covering Tulare County that was issued July 31st. Happened to be for the cabin fire, but it's still in effect and it's not limited to the cabin fire. So we have the governor's state of emergency already that gave us the necessary authorities.
Any questions for Andrew?
Real quick, is there a dollar amount you shoot for before you can declare a disaster, which would bring even more? Dollar amount, acre amount? At what point do you say, okay, there's a disaster?
It's a little bit complicated. And specific to wildfires, it doesn't actually go into the public assistance program, which, by the way, that state threshold, if it was an earthquake or a flood or something like that for the state, it would be about $61.5 million. It's a per capita figure. For the state of California, I believe it's about $61.5 million currently. Fires are a little bit different. This is federal responsibility area, so it's coming out of the federal budget anyway. And it would actually be subject to the Fire Management Assistance Grant Program versus that public assistance grant program that you would get by declaring a disaster.
Great. Thank you.
Just a quick comment. One of the difficulties is, as you say, it comes out of the federal budget, but it does not come out of the general fund budget. It comes out of the Forest Service budget. And so the problem is they expend all their money fighting fires, then they have no money to replant, to do anything else that needs to be done in these national forests, and that is, again, part of the problem. So some of the stuff that needs to be addressed because it's just not right, because they're not able to fulfill their responsibilities. Anyway, enough of my opinionating on this. So we'll entertain a motion for item 1.
I'll make that motion to approve, and Andrew, keep up the good work. It's not easy.
Thanks, sir.
Motion by Supervisor Ennis.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Cox. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. Now we'll go to item number 2, request from the County Administrative Office to choose one of the following options regarding the Tulare County Regional Transportation Impact Fee. Option 1 is support the development of a regional transportation fee. Option 2 is to oppose the development of such a fee.
Gene Rousseau, County Administrative Officer, your board asked for this item to be brought back for a decision on how the county, the board wants to go forward with traffic, or not go forward with traffic impact fees, and I'll turn it over to you folks to have a discussion and decide.
I'm happy to entertain whatever discussion we want. We did have quite a lot of discussion about this item at our last meeting, which is why I came forward today. And so I don't want to stop our conversation, but we don't need to necessarily go back over everything again. Supervisor Cox?
I can be brief. Most of you know I was very instrumental in spearheading this and trying to see this accomplished. And at first look, this was a pit bull of a plan. This was going to get us accomplished what we wanted to have it accomplish. And through the several meetings with the cities now and what this has gone through, I think we're looking at a chihuahua. So I don't think
a hairless one.
Maybe a hairless chihuahua. So I don't think as everyone's discussing this now, well, let's do residential only, no commercial, and let's do half or 25%. We're not going to be where we need to be 10, 20, and 30 years from now. So I am in support of impact fees, but I'm not in support of this one because it's been watered down so much. We're going to have to find a different way to skin this cat, and this will not get it done, in my opinion.
I just, when I was looking through our budget book, there's a tremendous amount of information at the beginning of it in terms of just general information. And one of them was about population growth. And over the 10-year period in Tulare County, from 2005 to 2015, there's been a 14% growth of population in the county. In the unincorporated part of Tulare County, which includes our unincorporated communities, not just out in the countryside, there's been a 0.1% decrease in the population. And that was my point before about how, we talk about impact fees are based upon impacts generated by growth. If we don't have any growth in the unincorporated part of Tulare County, how do we even justify an impact fee? Much less, how do we figure out a number on it? So anyway, I think it's time to be done with it. Any other comments by other board members or Supervisor Sheeta?
I support Supervisor Cox's approach. I think we need to look at this in a different way. It's very obvious from being in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento that it's going to be very difficult to get funding for transportation, for roads. We are seeing in the state of California already, they're looking at taxing our health insurance to start covering Obamacare. We've seen in the Assurance Authority, we're paying a penalty for our health insurance through the authority to cover Obamacare. There are a lot of other social programs that the state of California has put forward with this so-called surplus they have, and there's nothing set aside for transportation. So in the long run, we're going to have to do something to help ourselves, and I support the transportation impact fee, and I think we need to just take a little more thought on how we approach this.
Any other comments? Supervisor Ennis?
I would certainly agree with that. I could see this thing going nowhere. One city may be thinking about it, the other one completely against it. And then the major cities raising their impact fees in the past 6 months. Major cities already raised their impact fees. So,
for other impacts.
Yeah. So, no, I don't think it's going anywhere either.
Supervisor Vanderpool.
Not to beat a dead horse, but just to make sure that a comment is made related to this. I think that this was an interesting opportunity for the different jurisdictions in Tulare County, the cities and the county, to talk about this. And it was a very an interesting example brought up in the city of Woodlake when you look at what happened out there, and I think it was a Rite Aid pharmacy that was built out in that city. Had the transportation impact fee been in place, even as the watered down version, I'm not sure if it's the watered down version or the pit bull version, but in either case, it was, and Supervisor Cox confirmed it was the watered down version. A $28,000 impact fee could have led Rite Aid to not develop in that community, or would have led Rite Aid to not develop in that community. That's an important resource for the community, so that they're not having to drive to a larger city to maybe get their pharmaceuticals or goods that they would purchase there. And so I think that a lot of our cities and our communities looked at this and said, hey, we need growth. We need commercialization. We need residential improvements. And this transportation impact fee is going to prevent our communities from growing and getting this economic development and diversification of our economy. And so, I think that we as a county already have, and this isn't a county fee, and I think that point was not really made very well. This is all of us paying these fees. Every jurisdiction, whether you're in an unincorporated community, an incorporated city, this was a fee that everybody would have paid. This was not a county-driven program. It was an area-wide program. But I think it made very clear where the priorities of the residents are. And I think that in the future, through Measure R, we have the opportunity to where everyone, not just the developers, those that will change Tulare County's employment and landscape on the commercial level, will have the ability to contribute, not just the developers. And I think that a sales tax is a better way of looking at fixing and funding transportation in the future, and maybe we look at, for Measure R2 when that time comes, a different scale of that program to reach those goals. But I hope that in the next time that we evaluate a transportation impact fee, that we don't spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars that were spent in getting us to this point where we say no to something. But it was an important exercise so that the proper due diligence was done. But I think that I'm glad seeing this item come to us so that we can close this door right now, because I think it's very appropriate, and we see where the priorities of our communities really is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What this process has shown me is the self-interest of the incorporated cities is their first priority versus transportation, which all roads, as Supervisor Worthley often says, all roads lead to the cities. So while we talk about the priorities of the people in the cities are raising their impact fees substantially and have in the last 6 months. So it's a matter of where the cities decide to spend their money is the real issue. It's not so much what the residents of those cities prefer.
One final thought here. I've read it, I've heard it on the radio. There's been a huge misconception, like Supervisor Vanderpool said, this is not a county-imposed fee. This was a group joint effort to look at the possibility of having a regional impact fee, not a county impact fee, but a regional impact fee. Part of the problem most of the problem what I've seen is I've gone to the different city council meetings and talked to several council people from the cities, is that they don't understand that. They just didn't understand. I think some people, here might not understand the fee completely. And I heard some petty things said like, oh, well, the people from the county, they drive on that road too. They ought to pay for part of it. Well, it's got nothing to do with who's driving on the road today or tomorrow. It has to do with the new impact of new growth, new development, more people coming in. And it's too bad that way too many people did not understand that, and all they could think about was, if Supervisor Worthley, who lives up north, is going to drive down 198, he ought to pay for part of that road. It's very too bad that people didn't understand what was trying to be accomplished here. but it's a dead issue as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and last point I guess I will make it is that keep your eye on Sacramento and Washington, D.C., because, I mean, the governor has made a proposal on transportation. There's a lot of conversation about transportation, and part of that is looking at allocating some of those resources to counties as well. It's not just going to be necessarily just at the state level. So, and that was part of the thing, too. We were looking at something which is way out in the distant future, kind of beyond Measure R, and there's going to be things happening in the interim time that we don't know about. So, you know, there's lots of other opportunities to deal with our transportation issue beyond this. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, if there's anyone else that wants to beat the horse, they can, but at this time I would like to make a motion that we go with option 2, which is the request to oppose the development of regional transportation impact fees.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Supervisor Vanderpool, seconded by Supervisor Ennis. Please cast your votes.
You get real time for beating a horse.
And the vote is unanimous for option 2.
Hey, that horse was killed during your Board of Supervisors comments. That was the longest Board of Supervisors comments I've heard since I've been on the board, Mr. Ishida.
All right. At this time, we will take up our public hearing, and it will be the budget hearing. We begin with an introduction overview by our CAO, Jean Rousseau, and the presentation. Jean, I'd like to thank, I get to read this nice little thing here that was brought to me this morning. I would like to thank and commend the department heads and agency directors for their help in presenting budgets that meet the budget allocations. I would also like, oh, that's your part.
That's my part.
My part. Pardon me. You just start with your PowerPoint presentation. You're the blue. I got it now. I understand.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. Jean Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. It's time for some good news, and that's the fiscal and budgetary condition of Tulare County. Before I actually bring the individual budget items to the board for approval, I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to exceed 5 minutes, so bear with me. Here somewhere. Okay. Thank you, Ms. England. Once again, Jean Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. Each year we've used a term for the upcoming budget. We were rebuilding through after the Great Recession, and now we're going to start to infrastructure build and improvements. The highlights of the 14-15, I typically go over the highlights of the budget itself, the financial highlights, and as I was watching my Vikings get beat up last night by the Niners, I thought, let's go in a different direction. So I went through the budgetary, and before I go through these highlights, by these highlights that I've identified, by no means identify all of the accomplishments that the county accomplished last year. There was a lot of positive things going on at a number of different levels. These are just some highlights that I thought I would discuss this morning. And we've touched on a few already. In the HR section of the book, the budget book here, HR talks about the addition of Facebook and LinkedIn to reach out for future employees. That's a positive direction. The wellness program we've touched on quite a bit. It's in the second year. It's working well, and as evidenced by the reduction in our usage in our PPO plan. And it's too bad we weren't able to approve the virtually static increase in that plan, but the JPA is working fine. It's produced a lot of dividends. And last but not least, one of my favorite things that the HR is developing, in the process of developing, are employment metrics. We've experienced in some departments some issues that we were not aware of, and so the metrics are in place to help us make better decisions, to improve processes and what have you, and to just act smarter with information. Probation is another area that I identified. We're going to be going forward in 15-16 with we received a $3 million grant from the state for a juvenile vocation facility. As part of last year's budget, we put $700,000 aside for our match, and then they received additional grant monies to start 2 new courts, a domestic violence court and a DUI court. It's cool stuff. The assessor, auditor, and IT are in the process of working on a new property system. I've said this once, and I'll say it again, I'm sure. This was by far going to be the largest IT project in the history of our county. It's huge. We're in the process of cleaning up data. It's my understanding that we are ahead of schedule, which is a good thing, and we're anxiously waiting for Riverside to go live next summer. HHSA has a lot of positive things going on, despite the press scrutiny, which is unfortunate at best. Some of the items that I noted in their narrative is the hopelessness screening program, which was a program devised in the mental health area. It is nationally recognized, and it's considered to be a best practice, which is really cool stuff. The employee training, as if you know me, I'm a big fan of employee training. The department has done diversity training with Helen. Good job, Helen. And leadership training. So they are developing and preparing the leadership of the future. We're not only dealing with capital infrastructure, but we're dealing with human capital infrastructure improvements. OES, can't leave that. Well, let's go back to animal services, another area that's been under great scrutiny. Mr. Lutz did a great job with outreach, rebranding. We're going to redo the animal control area this fall, and you've done a good job. And the statistics play it out. And last but not least, OES, as we all are aware, it's done a yeoman's job. We've had to increase staff in that area. Those folks are doing things that have been working on this catastrophe for the last couple of years and have really kicked into overdrive this last year with the installation of tanks, distribution of bottled water, and so on. So as Mr. Ennis rightfully said, Mr. Lockman's doing a great job, and his folks are too. The sheriff, can't leave the sheriff out. You got to put the sheriff up here. They rolled out the mobile lab early last fiscal year, which will help with crime investigation. And they opened up a South County DRC, which is a work in progress. They're utilizing the substation adjacent to the old Porterville courthouse, and we're looking at potentially expanding that for programs and what have you, to increase the programs. Bless you. Solid waste. I refer to as Humpty Dumpty. We're in the process and have put Humpty Dumpty back together, so to speak. And after 10, 11 long years that Mr. Cox and Mr. Ishida remind me of virtually every other week, we approved the franchise agreements, although it was painful, and employed flow control to get control of our system, to put it in better fiscal condition, and it's something that we're going to have to stay vigilant on, but the solid waste is in much better shape than it was just 3 years ago. Another area that I'm really proud of, and the county should be proud of as a whole, is interdepartmental collaboration. At one time, the silos were so high and large and strong that departments didn't play well with each other, and that's not the case anymore. It's one of the strengths of the county. CCP is a great example. It's a collaboration required by statute, but has worked well with the justice partners, public defender, probation, district attorney, sheriff, along with our city partners, court partners, WIB, and some not-for-profits. It's a good example, and quite frankly, from what I understand, is one of the better groups in the state. They're not fighting over money; they're working together to come up with positive outcomes. The jails is another example. It's another painful process. It's like sitting in the dentist office waiting to be drilled. The Sheriff's Department has worked well with the CEO's office. We brought in facilities because they're going to be maintaining those for their expertise. IT is going to touch this project at some point. Another good example. We're not going to force anything down the Sheriff's Department. We're going to get the best project that we can afford. Emergency services, I touched on it, but those departments are working well with each other. Fire, sheriff, RMA, Health and Human Services are just doing a tremendous job. Step Up is another successful program on a number of different levels. Another example of things we're doing for unincorporated communities, and they have a plethora of departments that participate, in some cases on their own time. So it's been a really strong program. The Mental Health Court is a collaboration of the Superior Court, DA, Public Defender, and Probation, and it has been very successful. It's clearly an area that we need to focus on when it comes to reducing our jail population and what have you. And last but not least, I thought I put pot, but it's marijuana. It's pot in other areas. The marijuana task force that we put in place is a good collaboration between council, the sheriff, and RMA. They are literally pushing a rock up a hill to a certain degree, but we are making inroads as best we can with the statutory environment that we find ourselves in. And last but not least, I wanted to put up intra-departmental collaboration, and that's in the Resource Management Agency. Mr. Spada has, as you saw in a video that Mike Washington put up on the board here a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, with the silos falling down. They truly have fallen down and have been obliterated in that department. Public Works, Planning, and Administration are actually talking together, working together, getting things done. And they have a lot to be proud of. They have new leadership in Public Works. I look forward to working with them. And just to touch on a few things that they're doing are safe routes to school, the bridge program, which is, it's my understanding, is the strongest bridge program in the state, transit, grants, the permit system that they're working on that will go live hopefully at the end of next month, the various park improvements that we're doing, and last but not least, and one thing that Supervisor Innes touched on is economic development. We did our first business retention visit to businesses in Terra Bella, and I was very impressed with RMA staff. I think our decision, or the board's decision, to move away from the EDC is a good one. Global overview is the budget's grown quite a bit since last year. This is the largest budget that Tulare County has ever had and seen. I'm not going to touch on the general fund increase. I will touch on it in subsequent slides. The special revenue increase is predominantly in the realignment funds from the state and roads. The change in statute that requires us to vendor out road services, that's increased the appropriations in those two areas, which is predominantly the reason for the increase. Capital projects is really the big game in town, so to speak. That increase of approximately $30 million includes the proposed purchase of the Tulare Acres commercial building down the way, which will provide not only lease revenue income, but approximately, let's say, 65 to 75,000 square feet for use by our departments. We're still working through who should go there, and that's kind of a fun process to go through. The debt has increased somewhat. We're going to use $11 million of that appropriation to help buy Cigna with cash. We're not going to go in debt for that acquisition.
Gene, I'll ask you a quick question.
Yes.
So the debt obligation, is that primarily our retirement debt, retirement board debt?
No, that has nothing to do with retirement.
Okay.
Retirement's included in salary and benefits. Okay. Lastly, on internal services, we increased our workers' comp contribution. We're self-insured, so we're charging ourselves $2 million more, which is approximately $1 million more than what we charge ourselves prior to going into the recession. It was one of the tools in the toolbox that we used. We cut our contributions to the reserve in half by 50% to $5.2 million. This budget reflects a $2 million increase that brings that annual contribution, so to speak, to 11.2. We're going to take a look and see where we're at in the next year or two relative to our reserves. We've also made a correction in the accounting for the workers' comp. We were doing some things that we shouldn't have been doing, but since we've identified it, corrected it, and we're moving forward. And lastly, flood control has continued to grow each year without much going on. But this year, RMA has been very proactive to deal with hopefully the El Nino this fall or next week. And so we're looking at some flood control work out by our correctional facilities and in District 4 in areas that have been hard hit in the past. And we'll see what we can get done. So that. I'll touch on the general fund. It's the main operating fund. If you're not required to be in a separate fund, you're going to be in the general fund. General fund history, as you can see, we've grown each year since 2011-12. This year's increase of approximately $35 million really has to do with Health and Human Services caseload growth of approximately $18 million. And then because of the board's conservative budgeting practice in the past, we have $17 million in one-time monies, some of which we're going to use for the purchase of the Tulare Acres / Cigna building and other items that I will highlight in subsequent slides. Here is it's kind of a busy schedule, but what it shows is what I refer to as the pie, how we allocate our net county costs or general county revenues. We use the protocol of trying to keep we went into the recession and the pie got smaller. We talked about keeping criminal justice at 70%. The reason why it's below 70% on this slide is the 70% is really the structural percentage of criminal justice to countywide revenues. What this schedule includes is the fund balance, which has a lot of one-time monies in it. If you pull the one-time monies out, criminal justice is hovering either a little bit below or a little bit above 70%. So we've been consistent with that protocol, in some cases going up. And as you can see, criminal justice has grown each year, as well it should. And one of the things you don't see behind the scenes is our spreading of overhead, which can swing one way to the other. So it does affect the numbers somewhat, but you can see increase in criminal justice. The administration and fiscal, the increase of $7 million from last year to this year is really the additional fund balance on the bottom and one-time monies that we're going to use for a number of different projects and efforts and what have you. So this is a good reflection of a conservative approach to budgeting. Our fund balance on the bottom, keep in mind our structural fund balance that we need to prepare the budget for next year with a $1 million contingency is $5.8 million. Anything above $5.8 million is considered one time, and that's why we have so much one-time money. This slide here is a recap of our countywide revenues, and this is really the ballgame. It's how you manage these revenues. It's how aggressive you choose, the board and councils choose to be with these revenue estimates. And let me start with the top two. The top two, secured property taxes and motor vehicle fees, are tied directly to assessed value growth. Motor vehicle fees in the past used to be site-specific, what was received in counties and what have you. And with the triple flip and the various state changes in their fiscal approach to budget, they have now adjusted vehicle license fees to be tied to assessed value. So if you add those two together, it's approximately 60% of our total budgeted countywide revenue. So assessed value growth is significant. The revenues, the budget estimates that you see up there use approximately half of the assessed value growth provided by Mr. Hill. So what we're talking about is he provided a 5.2 increase in assessed value for the county. The revenue estimates reflect a usage of 2.6% of that, which leaves 2.6% to fall to fund balance at the end of this year and to be used for next year and whatever fiscal challenges we might have. And that's a good thing. Prop 172 and local sales tax, I'll go into it a little bit. We're even more conservative with those estimates, and I've got some subsequent slides that will explain and justify the conservative nature of it. All other revenues are franchises, redevelopment, PILT, which is always in danger at the federal level. But of note, in 14-15, we received approximately $3 million in one-time monies, $2 million in mandate reimbursements, and about $800,000 in a lawsuit settlement with Office Depot. We're using that $3 million because it's one time to help us buy Cigna. But the actual amounts are typically around 30. We've slowly are easing our way towards the $30 million mark, but we certainly are leaving some on the table again for future budget challenges and one-time projects. Countywide revenues, as I indicated back here, because I can call this the ball game, it's how, just how aggressive you want to be with revenue estimates, how much you want to put into one-time monies, and ongoing costs. And with Prop 172, this board has taken a conservative approach, clearly. With the actual amounts coming in at $30 million, a budget of 26 could be considered to be overly conservative. I don't think so. This slide is a good example of why we're doing what we're doing. As you can see, during the housing boom, it peaked, the Prop 172 peaked out at around between 24 and 25 million. And at the depths of the Great Recession, it dropped approximately 20% to 20 million. So to have a revenue estimate of 26 million, let's see. Well, I guess still losing how to use it. There we go. They have a revenue estimate of 26 million. If you reduce it by 10%, you're right around. It gives you 10%, 10 to 15% cushion. Again, that's a good thing as long as we all understand it falls to fund balance and used for one-time purposes. It's not a bad thing. And you'll see, you'll see the usage of one-time monies coming up. Sales tax is another example of revenue item that's subject to economic change. We just got the HDL, which is our sales tax consultant that we don't pay anything to, but we get reports from, reported the second quarter 2015 and actually decreased by 3.8% over last year's quarter. So maybe we're seeing some of the impacts of the drought. I'm not sure. For the most part, if you look at the various quarters, they've grown each year since 2010. Every now and then you'll get a blip. There's an adjustment by the state board when they find misallocation and what have you. It kind of throws a monkey wrench into trends and what have you. But the second quarter of 2015 is, again, 3.8% lower than last year at this time. So to have a revenue estimate of 9.5 in this for that particular revenue item is I think is reasonable. Another part of this is in local sales tax, the state took 25% of it for triple flip purposes and gave us an estimate for that 25%. While the triple flip has gone away, we're going to get a true up for the 25% of whatever that number is, 11.5 million. I'm guessing it's going to be 2.5 to 3 million. We're waiting to get that number from the state this fall sometimes. So we're going to take a conservative approach with that revenue estimate, and that's fine. That's put us in good shape. So what are we doing with these one-time monies that are generated by a conservative approach to the revenue estimates? We're increasing reserves by $1 million, so we're going to go from 24 million to 25. We started at 20 million a few years ago, and we're building it up consistent with the financial policies that we passed here a year or two ago. And for the first time, we're going to establish a pension stabilization reserve. We're going to put some money aside. We're not going to give it to retirement. It's not a good time to give it to retirement. Retirement has seen the infamous market adjustment that we're all waiting for. And it's been around 10%. We're hoping the adjustment is done. We're going to put that into its own reserve. We're going to work with a firm to help us invest that money to try to maximize the return. So at some point in the future, when that reserve is at a point where we do feel comfortable with giving it to retirement, if we do, we have the ability to do so. The next one is $1 million for maintenance and restoration of county parks. This is in line with the development of the Park Oversight Committee, which I believe the first meeting is this week sometime. And that group will start with the bylaws, which is always one of my favorite areas. Just kidding. And then they'll start with spade and neuter program, the merits of spade and neuter. And then they'll go into what to do with the $1 million in the park system as a whole. How much to allocate to Mooney. And the county has a number of parks in its system with needs. We've done work in Bartlett Park to the tune of over $1 million and other improvements that we really haven't played up in the public as much as we
I have a question about that too. We had a maintenance issue where we looked at fixing park benches and tables and barbecue grills and so forth. Did we expend that in this year's budget, or is that a carryover?
I think it was early this fiscal year, to be honest with you. We started this summer. late this summer.
It has been expended?
It has been expended.
Okay.
In fact, I was out at the employee appreciation picnic for RMA, overeating as usual.
So this will be an
And-
additional $1 million?
Yes, on top of that. I think we put in approximately...
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. Here, you did make the point that it's for all county parks. I just want to make sure that this $1 million is definitely giving. I don't want to give direction to the Parks Advisory Committee because they're going to make recommendations to us, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there are more parks in this county than just Mooney Grove. Mooney Grove is the crown jewel along with Balch Park, but the expenditures that can be made in unincorporated parks, unincorporated communities, parks like Pixley or Alpaugh, can really mean a lot to those who may not say that much about it, but that is a real jewel for those communities as well. So I want to make sure that we expend resources there as well.
I agree. It's in everyone's interest that the unincorporated communities have places for kids to go to play and do their thing. We put aside an additional $3 million for county building improvements, remodels, and department relocations. As I indicated I met with the press yesterday. I saw myself on TV. Could have done a better job, but we're putting $3 million aside for the improvements to the old Tulare County admin building across the way, and the planetarium east of us. At this point, we're going to be moving HR to the planetarium. It's going to provide more space, more meeting room space, and what have you, and our information technology department to the administration building. We're not sure how much money we're going to need. We want to make sure we have enough. Once they fully vacate the buildings, which is my understanding will be no later than this December, then we will. We already have a plan in place. We're inventorying cubicles at our surplus to see, try to reduce how much we need to purchase. I've told our capital projects folks, which have a lot on their plate, but I think they can take care of it, that we want to make sure we do things right. We're going to go in. We're going to put departments in. We're not going to do the improvements after they're in. Let's do it. We need to carpet. We need to paint. We need to put new wiring in. Let's do it. And we've already done the analysis of those two buildings, and we look forward to moving departments as soon as we can. We also put $1 million towards the probation security cameras for their institution. This has been a project that has taken a little bit longer than it should, but the facilities folks got together with IT and really came up with a creative solution. I look forward to that going forward, and the probation chief is very happy, which is a good thing. The general plan, we put $1.2 million aside. We're adding additional monies to the Economic Development Trust Fund. Just to remind the board, we put some of the one-time residual monies from redevelopment after it was killed by Governor Brown into that fund for matches for future economic development type grants. The general plan implementation with the various community plans are multi-year plans, and instead of letting it fall to fund balance and rebudgeting each year, we're going to let the department put that money into a trust fund and reimburse itself as it goes. We have a lot of plans in place. The RMA, like everything else, is probably prepared more community plans than in maybe the history of Tulare County. So we've got a lot more to do. It's very exciting for the communities, and it's going to help with infrastructure needs and future economic development. And lastly, back to jails. We're going to have the groundbreaking for the South County Jail late January, early February of next calendar year. That's a 2-year construction project, and we're putting $1.5 million aside just to play it safe. These jail projects are large, voluminous. We want to make sure, like everything else, we do things right, and we don't create a maintenance nightmare with some of these. So we're going to put money aside. If it comes in below what we put aside, we'll redirect the money and bring something back to this board for direction. We're not done. As I indicated earlier, the probation received a grant from the state, and we'll be starting that project, I believe, this fiscal year of $3.7 million for the vocational facility. out with all our other correctional facilities north of here. We put $3 million aside. We're going to go for another jail grant. To remind the board, we received $60 million in AB 900 for the South County Jail with our match and additional monies to meet that project cost. We received initially a $40 million allocation from SB 1022, which was actually the third round of funding. That was reduced to $33.3 million, and Mr. Hess and his folks are going up to Sacramento this week to finalize that project. Right behind it, we're gonna apply for another $40 million project that we're referring to the sister project of 1022. And at the end of the day, if we get 863, we have the match set aside, we will effectively have replaced over 50% of the jail beds in the county without going into debt in a 5-year period. It's good stuff. We wanted to make note of, we made our last COPS debt payment in August of this year. We are virtually debt-free other than good old Chevron debt that keeps, it's like a thorn in the side, you know? But it's out there, and we will most likely pay that off next year. We were positioned to pay it off this year, and then the Cigna/Tulare Acres facility came to our attention, and we decided to redirect that money accordingly. I already talked about workers' comp. We negotiated 2-year labor agreements with all of our bargaining units except the fire department bargaining unit. We hope to come to agreement with them soon. We have labor peace in this county for 2 years, and that's a good thing. The bottom 2 items are items that we suspended during the Great Recession. We had a lot of tools in the toolbox. We tried to avoid reducing employee salaries because we'd made great strides prior to the Great Recession, tired of being a training ground for other departments. So these 2 items we suspended for a period of time. It ticked people off left and right. We are restoring them effective 15-16, and the first payouts will be in January, I believe, for sick leave. And deferred comp is for unrepresented employees. Other highlights of other funds, the fire fund, as Charlie indicated, we've got we got some folks back in South Dakota driving back. Is it two fire engines and 2 patrol vehicles, I believe? So we'll be rolling those out here whenever they get here. So that'll be 4 significant additions to the inventory. In addition to that, we're going to be buying this equipment for our department. Solid Waste is evaluating CNG for county vehicles and other municipalities, and this isn't a great explanation, but it's also working on the maintenance facility out by the road yard. We hit a little bump in the road with the consultant last fiscal year, and we're going back to the drawing board and looking at the potential for CNG from Solid Waste and how would it affect that project, and RMA will bring that forward in the next couple of months. Risk management is assisting departments in developing emergency action plans. That's something that we need to, it's a part of protecting our employees and providing a safer workplace, and that's something that's very important to the board and to management in the county. So I applaud their efforts. And capital projects, like I indicated, capital projects is breaking ground in the South County Detention Facility. It has a lot on its plate. It's going to be building 2 jails, the probation facility, moving the IT department, approximately over 150 employees, HR, risk management, district attorney, and I look forward to working with Capital over the next year. We've got a solid group. They've been unleashed to a certain degree, and they are really stepping up and taking names. That's a good thing. Debt loads. I came up with this because we did make the last debt payment in August of this year. That will provide for future capital project needs, which we desperately need to replace some of our old, worn-out buildings. But debt loads of the nation, state, and county went online to a number of different sites, and the estimate for federal, states, and local government debt is $21.7 trillion. The federal government's current general fund debt, this isn't Social Security, this isn't any social programs, this is just the general fund debt that they've issued treasuries for, is $17.2 trillion 2 days ago, and it changes every day, or 425% of the budget. What does that mean? That means if the feds didn't spend money for almost 4.5 years, they would maybe pay down their debt. That's not going to happen. The state of California has a relatively high debt load of $75.9 billion general fund debt load, which is 67% of their budget. And then you got the County of Tulleri's general fund debt is that infamous Chevron energy improvement loan of $3.8 million, or 0.5% of the budget, just to put things in perspective. And again, we're going to recommend paying off that debt next year. What the future holds, again, it's all about capital projects. They got a lot on their plate. There's going to be a lot of logistics as we move IT out of General Plaza. And what, do we expand Health and Human Services? Do we move Health and Human Services? There's a lot to be decided. When we move HR to the planetarium, risk management's going to move in behind them, so we'll break the lease that Risk has and their property on Hyde. When IT comes out of the courthouse, the DA's investigators are going to come out of their cramped working quarters into the courthouse. We'll terminate that lease, and there are potential other leases that might be terminated depending on what we decide on Cigna. Again, the ongoing drought is the biggest issue in this county. That's why the budget is as conservative as it is. We're holding back somewhat, hoping that we don't have to use those funds, but if we have to, we're positioned, I believe, well to absorb some type of reduction if it plays out. Retirement costs are going to increase. We created a committee with our local retirement board, which we have a great relationship with. We really appreciate the relationship we have with them. It's not like that in other counties. We've agreed to do what most other folks have already done or in the process of doing. That's reducing their assumption rate. There's a cost associated with that. And as we've noticed, the market has not performed well, didn't perform well last fiscal year, and is doing even worse this year. So we're going to have a challenge with retirement, but our retirement plan is the best funded 1937 Act plan in the state. The board has done a good job, both the Board of Supervisors and holding the line on benefits and what have you, and the Board of Retirement and managing the program. And lastly, as we put things back together and restore the sick leave buyback and the deferred comp and start to reduce budgeted salary savings and what have you, the balance of future revenue growth is really going to go between unfreezing additional positions and cost of living increases for our employees. But again, just to reiterate, over the last 3 years, we provided a 7%, total of 7% increase, 3% last year and 4% for the next 2 years. That's pretty good in this environment. So that's it for my presentation. If you have any questions, I will jump right into the actual.
I have a couple of comments I want to make real quickly. First off, the $1 million addition to reserve to $25 million. When I came on the board 17 years ago, we had a $25 million reserve at that time, and our budget was probably $600 million. So
still got work to do.
Yeah, so our prudence would dictate that we need to continue to increase that reserve as a good accounting tool for a budget of the size that we have. Secondly, when we look at, also when I came on the board, the county had just gone through quite a process of borrowing to build and buy properties. So the government plaza, I think, was entirely bought with borrowed funds, which is the last payment we're making in our COPS, probably dates back to that original lending. We had borrowed money to finish up the juvenile facility. We borrowed to build the pretrial facility, and we were spending 5% of our general fund on paying. We're now paying 0.5%. We were paying 5%. The last thing I want to say is that the
0.5% is the total balance. It's not necessarily what we're paying. We're paying even less.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to point out is I think if there's one, and I appreciate that we have this $1 million we're setting aside in our reserve for retirement, because the one, as strong as we are, and we are the strongest of the 37 Act counties, when we look at the unfunded liability that continues to grow annually, that is something in the future which we need to address. So I appreciate we're starting this fund. I think we need to increase this fund. We need to look, and as we get beyond, we're doing a lot of capital projects that will go on for the next 2 to 3 years. I think beyond that, the focus of those boards, which probably won't include some of us up here, ought to be on retirement, because I think retirement is going to become the issue in the future. We want to get ahead of that. We don't want to get to the place like so many other institutions are today, of finding that so much of their general fund dollars have to go to pay the debt on their retirement, and we don't want that to happen to Tulare County. We're in the process of reducing our assumed rate of investment return, but even so, that may be high. I mean, as we look at this marketplace, that we're trying to get to 7.5%. Unless things start turning around, we need to get down to 5% or something like that. And as we look at as reducing our assumed rate of returns, our unfunded liability is going to grow significantly. So I think that's the one spot we need to kind of keep our eyes on in the future, is retirement. But I would take our budget, and something that often is missed by many people is we have a great budget, but you can balance a budget with borrowing money. But what's even more important, we're not borrowing money, and we have a good balance sheet. That's the thing that is often a case that you look at a lot of different, the state of California, for instance, the balance sheet is pretty scary. The budget, people don't understand that. They look at, well, all this money's coming in more than what was projected for their annual budget. That doesn't even begin to touch the balance sheet problems they have. Their liabilities are just enormous. So that's my comments. I don't know if any of the board members want to make any other statements or. Okay, let's move on.
I agree wholeheartedly with your comments. So I'd like to thank and commend the department heads and agency directors. I'm very fortunate as a CEO to represent that group and lead that group. They've done a great job in managing their budgets, and I appreciate their efforts. I would also like to thank my staff for all their hard work in preparing the budget. They put in a lot of hard work and effort to prepare this book. There's a lot of good information, as the chairman indicated, in addition to the picture of the board of stats, my message, and so on. It's just well done. There's a lot of information, so I suggest you take a look at it. I did pick the picture on the cover, which is, I'm not sure if that's the place where they filmed the True Detective series, but it looks like it, so we went with it. Looks good. And it's a picture from our Balch Park, which is just an awesome. Never been to Balch Park? Suggest you go to. It's a great place. So the process as we'd like to follow is to present the enterprise fund with the board sitting as a Terabella Sewer Maintenance District. We were just in Terabella last week. And the special district fund with the board sitting as a Tulare County Flood Control District for your review, discussion, modification, and approval. The remainder of the funds will be presented for your review, discussion, modification, and final approval. The materials we'll be working with from today are the recommended budget book that I just talked about with the picture of Balch Park, and the agenda item which provides for the order of the items. At this time, I will ask that the chairman adjourn as the Tulare County Board of Supervisors and convene as the Terabella Sewer Maintenance District.
We will now adjourn as the Tulare County Board of Supervisors and convene as the Terabella Sewer Maintenance District.
Okay, we'll go to the blue letters now. Enterprise funds are used to account for activity for which a fee is charged to external users for goods and services. I'm asking that you adopt the fiscal year 2015-16 final budget for the Terabella Sewer Maintenance District and authorize the auditor controller to make necessary minor adjustments in order to bring the budget into final balance. I have no other specific comments about this fund, but would be happy to respond to any questions from the board. And this particular item is on page 484 of the book.
Any questions? No questions. I'd move for approval. First, at this time, we will open the public hearing for the. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. No, that's right. I'm jumping ahead. Are we taking a motion on each item then? I don't think so. Yeah. Are we? That's not what I'm showing on my.
Yeah. We're taking a vote for everyone.
All right. So then I would entertain a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Ennis, second by Supervisor Shida.
Public hearing for each one.
That I have a public hearing on the enterprise fund, but I don't show.
This is for the
Mr.
Terabella
Chairman,
Sewer Maintenance.
The public hearing is listed for your entire item.
No,
So-
well, this is the Terabella board.
Yes.
Right.
So they're
But
going to close this,
open and
take the vote,
open it,
and
close,
then
yes.
reconvene.
Okay.
Clear as mud?
No, I'm not clear. According to the script I have not yet opened the
At this time, we will open the public hearing on the bottom of the first page.
I have at the bottom of the first page having to do the enterprise fund. I have nothing prior to that. So we open the general. Do I have to have open the public hearing at this time for the entire budget? Then the public hearing is now open.
Well,
For the
we're opening the public. You're sitting as a Terabella Sewer Maintenance District. You're opening the public hearing for that fund, which happens to be an enterprise
I
fund.
got you. Okay, I got you. All right. Okay. Very good. So the public hearing is now open. Did anybody wishing to address the board on this matter may come forward this time to speak to this matter? We're going to get this going now after we pass the first one. It'll go smoothly. Anyone wishing? No one? Then we will close the public hearing. We have a motion by Supervisor Innes, seconded by Supervisor Shida. Any further discussion? All in favor, please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous in support. And we will now adjourn as the Terabella Sewer Maintenance District and convene as the Tulare County Flood Control District.
Your board reviews plans and project statements throughout the year for the Tulare County Flood Control District. In fact, they have their own commission. I mentioned earlier that we're going to be expending some funds from this fund, really for the first time in a while, to deal with to prepare for the El Nino. I'm asking you that you adopt the fiscal year 2015 final budget for the Tulare County Flood Control District and authorize the auditor controller to make necessary minor adjustments in order to bring the budget into final balance. I have no specific comments other than the ones I just made about this fund, but would be happy to respond to any questions from the board.
Any questions?
Just a comment. Sure glad to see this fund, this special fund, actually performing activities and doing things within their jurisdiction. And with that, after the public hearing is open.
We'll open the public hearing at this time for the Tulare County Flood Control District Fund. Anyone wishing to address the board on this matter is invited to come forward at this time. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I will move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Vanderpool, seconded by Supervisor Cox. Please cast your votes, and the votes are unanimous. Now adjourn as the Tulare County Flood Control District and reconvene as the Tulare County Board of Supervisors.
Okay. Enterprise and assessment district funds are used to account for an activity for which a fee is charged to external users for goods or services. The enterprise funds are solid waste and transit funds are the largest enterprise funds in the county. The assessment districts are L&M, L1, Erosi Lighting Landscape, L5, Erosi Storm Drain, L7, Poplar Storm Drain, L10, Erosi Storm Drain, L16, Early Mart Lighting / Landscape, L60, Tipton Storm Drain, L65, Early Mart Storm Drain, L70, Cutler Storm Drain. Hopefully they're used quite a bit this fall. L75, Teviston Storm Drain, L80, Early Mart Storm Drain, L85, Erosi Storm Drain, L86, Visalia Cottondale Storm Drain, L87, Visalia Capsu Storm Drain, L88, Visalia, M2, Visalia El Rio Road, M3, Strathmore Road, M4, Porterville Road, M6, Visalia Acacia Road, M7, Poplar Road, M86, Visalia Cottontail Road, M87, Visalia Capsu Road, M88, Goshen Road, M89, Goshen, and last but not least, M90, Visalia. I have no specific comments about these funds other than that we're actually expending funds quite a bit in those, which is a good thing. But I would be happy to respond to any questions from the board. If there are no questions, I will move on.
Questions?
Okay. The county service areas 1 and 2 budgets provide for activities that are specific to areas and projects. Users pay fees for these activities. The funds are C15, Lemon Cove Water, Z1, El Rancho Sewer, Z10, Delft Colony Sewer, Z11, Delft Colony Water, Z50, Seville Sewer, Z60, Tonyville Sewer, Z70, Tullyville Sewer, Z80, Traver Sewer, Z90, Yedem Sewer, Z91, Yedem Water, Z95, Wells Tract Water, and Z96, Wells Tract Sewer. If there are no questions, I will move on. Internal service funds are used to account for goods and services provided by one department or agency to other departments or agencies. These funds operate on a cost reimbursement basis. The funds are under the County Administrative Office / General Services, copier services, custodial services, facilities, fleet services, ground services, mail services, print services, and utilities. County Council on Risk Management under County Council oversees the General Liability Fund, medical malpractice, property insurance, and our Workers' Compensation Self-Insured Fund. Human Resources and Development oversees the Dental Insurance, ISF. And last but not least, might be my favorite ISF, but I'm not going to tell people, is the Information and Communications Technology, Communications and Information and Communications Technology. If there are no questions, I will move on. The operating budgets are the core funds that provide services to within the county. The funds are aviation, building debt service, capital projects, child support services, fire community development block grants, fire, fish and wildlife, health realignment, home program fund, housing successor agency, ICT special projects. That's a new special revenue fund that we set up to kind of to not micromanage, but to separate the large IT projects that they're working on. Indigent healthcare, library, mental health realignment, roads, social services realignment, tobacco settlement proceeds, and our workforce investment board. If there are no questions, I will move on. Okay. Our final group of budgets comprise the general fund budgets. These are the items that aren't required, departments aren't required to be in other funds, and they are, starting with budget book pages 193 through 359. Agriculture Commissioner / Sealer of Weights and Measures, Assessor, Clerk, Recorder, Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector, Registrar of Voters, that's a mouthful, Board of Supervisors, Capital Acquisitions, Central Telephone Services, Citizens Option for Public Safety, Cooperative Extension, County Administration, County Council, District Attorney, General Services, Health and Human Services Agency, Human Resources and Development, Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act, Miscellaneous Admin, Miscellaneous Criminal Justice, Probation, Public Defender, Purchasing, Resource Management Agency, Rural Crime Prevention, and last but not least, our esteemed Sheriff / Coroner. If there are no questions, I will move on once again. The general revenues budget makes up the bulk of the county's discretionary revenues. That is my favorite part of the budget. And countywide revenues can be found on page 224 of the book. If there are no questions, I will move on. Almost done. The contingency is recommended at $5 million as modified by your board. Again, that's a conservative amount, but it's one that served us well. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the final action requested today is to adopt the final budgets for all the funds that I just spent the last few minutes describing, and activities as modified during the hearings for the enterprise and assessment district funds, county service areas 1 and 2, special districts, internal service funds, operating funds, and the general fund. Amend the personnel class specifications, class designations, and compensation changes. This says subject to meet and confer. We already met and conferred. Amend the position allocation list reflecting adds, deletes, amends, reclassifications, and subject to meet and confer, which we already met and conferred. Approve a 2% cost of living for county elected officials. Again, we provided a 2% increase to our unrepresented employees by practice, county practice. That 2% is extended to the Board of Supervisors. It will, and the other 4 elected officials. Consistent
Can we say that again so that that's clearly understood?
Okay. When we give an increase to our unrepresented employees in the county, that same increase is given to county elected officials. So we gave a 2% increase to unrepresented employees. When you compare that increase to the other bargaining units, the majority of other bargaining units negotiated a 3% increase for this year and a 1% for next year. then represented, we gave 2 and 2 because that's what we started with at the beginning of the negotiating process. Whatever the unreps get, the elected officials get. So the sheriff, district attorney, the assessor, and the auditor controller are also going to receive the 2% as a part of that action. So it's consistent with the May 19th resolution action and pursuant to County Ordinance number 3444. So to make it clear, the board is going to receive an increase 60 days after these budget hearings, consistent with local ordinance. Whenever we give increases to unrepresented employees, the board and the other 4 elected officials get the same increase. If we give an increase to one of the 4 elected officials, sheriff, DA, assessor, auditor, controller, divide that increase by 4, and that increase is given to the Board of Supervisors. We're not giving an increase to any of those 4 elected officials. We did give an increase the last 2 years, as based on surveys to make their salaries more competitive. We gave an increase to the auditor controller 2 years ago and the assessor last year. There are no increases for those 4 elected officials in this year's budget. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Where am I at? And authorize our esteemed auditor controller to make necessary minor adjustments in order to bring the fiscal year 2015 budget into final balance.
Very well. We open the public hearing. This matter. Anybody wishing to address the board at this time on this matter is welcome to come forward this time. Mr. Segala.
Jose Segala, 1811 West Sunnyside Avenue. Wanted to thank Mr. Rousseau for that explanation of the last item. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. Obviously, the budget has been prepared, and a lot of great things are going to come out of the budget and the process and all the folks who worked on it. But I guess the one thing that I really wanted to put to your attention is kind of frame it. I was thinking about what to say a few minutes ago in terms of how to address this issue, and then Mr. Rousseau having explained the issue of the raises for the board and other county officials. So I kind of wanted to frame it in a choice. The question I had was basically, do you guys feel you deserve another pay raise? I've been coming to the board meetings the last couple of months. I've been assigned by SEIU to cover the board meetings, and I just recently, know that you received another pay raise earlier. I don't think the ink has been dry yet, but you did get one earlier.
No, that's incorrect.
That's not
And
true.
so there was, during the negotiation, I saw on the agenda that there was an increase.
That's
So
not
that's
correct.
incorrect. Then
You're incorrect.
okay. Well then,
May I state correct? Can I correct
could
the
I?
record?
Sure.
In May, the board granted.
Did they hold my time? Okay.
We'll give you a little more
We'll
time.
give you extra time. In May, the board granted the unrepresented employees an increase and stated their intention to do so in the next fiscal year. That's not binding on them. They also stated their intention to do so here in September. They did not get a raise in May. They could have changed their minds. They did not. Pursuant to the county ordinance, it's culled out of the agenda item, so it's specifically, for want of a better way, called out to the public, both the elected officials' raise and the board raises. So this is the only raise that we're talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. So I think my remarks are focused then on a choice. I mean, I don't think, unless the county council can correct me again, I don't believe it's an automatic. It's a decision that this board has to vote on, which is why it's here before you today, to choose whether to accept that pay raise. If I'm incorrect, if that county council can say that, but that's my understanding.
You are not correct.
So it's an automatic pay increase?
If the board grants an increase to the elected officials, the ordinance provides that it would be granted to them as well. The board members, individual members, could elect not to take a raise, and in fact, in past years, I think some board members did do that when we were doing freezes. I'm seeing nods.
So I guess my understanding is that if the board gives the sheriff a raise, then they get the raise, and if they choose individually to not take the raise, that's their choice.
Correct.
So with that in mind, then I think part of it is just perhaps taking that leadership. If you feel that the sheriff and the county clerk and the other 2 elected officials deserve a raise, then that's your prerogative. But I do think that it would take both leadership and courageous leadership on your part to say, you know what, they'll take the raise, but we will choose not to take so. If we can make that in the form of this motion, that would be fantastic. But once you do approve the sheriff and those other 3 individuals, their pay raise, I think it would be great to be able to show our workers, to show the county employees that, yes, we did get 7% over the last couple of years or in this process, but it had been pretty much a long time since they had received any type of pay increases. So I think it would be great if you chose to not take it as an individual and just be able to have that courage and boldness to say, you know what, we are going to give the sheriff a raise, but we're going to choose not to take it ourselves. So I hope that you guys keep that in mind as you move forward on this budget. Thank you.
Chair, can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, Gene Rousseau, County Administrative Officer. First of all, just to remind Mr. Segala, if you're not aware, that the County of Tulare is the only county in the valley of the 8 counties that publicly announces increases to the board. All the other counties have a behind-the-scenes adjustment to either judges' salaries or other types of indices. We take this action publicly. We discuss it publicly. We put it in the agenda. We announce it publicly to make sure it's as transparent as can be. And when you look at the financial condition of the county relative to our neighbors and the state as a whole, yeah, this board deserves a raise, and every employee in the county deserves a raise. So as a process goes, when the unreps get it, the board typically gets it. The other 4 elected officials are unrepresented too, so they get what the unrepresented get. We want to have competitive salaries up top to bottom, and we're in the process of doing that, in addition to a safe workplace and what have you. And anytime you have any issues relative to workplaces, contact the CEO next time. In mind.
All right.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, to expand on Mr. Rousseau's excellent remarks, not only are you the only county in the valley to do so, you are one of the few counties in the state of California to do so. So I think you should take great pride in that.
Anybody else wishing to address the board on matters during the public comment period? All right, we'll close the public hearing and now request a motion to approve.
Before we move approval, I want to respond. I will be taking the raise. And anybody who ever saw a financial statement of a company that was in the shape that we're in, I guarantee you there would be substantial bonuses that would go with a raise. The only person who gets a substantial raise around here because of our financial statement is probably our CAO, which is deserved. But I will be taking my raise. I move approval.
Mr. Chair, just to make a comment, I wanted to make sure that it was pointed out, and you did mention it. Thank you to the department heads and directors for all of their hard work, but I also want to extend that to our employees as well. I think that department heads, employees, your office, you as the CAO, do a fantastic job in delivering services in a fiscally responsible manner to the people of Tulare County, and I think Tulare County is in a fantastic position. We have both men and women on the front lines every day delivering services. We have men and women on the front lines every day putting their lives on the line to keep Tulare County moving forward and our residents safe. I appreciate the work that all of those individuals do on behalf of Tulare County. This budget you see in one big number is over $1 billion, but those individual lives are the people that are making all of this happen and making this budget complete. So I want to say thank you to them, and I want to say thank you to the people of Tulare County for giving us the opportunity to steer this county in the right direction. You see that you have 5 like-minded individuals in front of you on this Board of Supervisors that put the county first and make sure that this county is fiscally sound moving forward. I think that there are residents in other parts of the state that question what their county government is doing and wonder why they're in, and they hear the stories of furloughs and drastic cuts, and they're not proud of the financial position that their county is in. But I can tell you that this board is proud of the financial condition of our county, proud of the people we have working for us, and we're grateful for everyone who makes this budget and makes this county work moving forward. So I want to just say thank you and let everybody know that they are appreciated for all the great work that they do. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fox.
And before I second that, I'm just a little miffed because over the last couple of months, our CAOs actually identified classifications of employees that were 10, 15, 20% lower than other individuals working in nearby counties or government agencies. And those folks were given 5% increases. And I don't remember anybody coming to the podium thanking the CAO or the board for reaching down to those people that were way out on their comps. And if you're going to come to a meeting like this and complain about a $10,000 action in a over $1 billion budget, you ought to come to the board and say thank you for recognizing those that are working maybe out of classification or working for 20% less, and identifying that they needed to be brought up. So if you're going to come and complain, you ought to come and say thank you too. And I'll second the motion.
And before we take action on the motion, I just wanted to make a brief comment. In the past, when members of the board did not take a pay increase, it had to do with this issue of giving increases to specified elected officials, where we were trying to make some of those equity adjustments. But at that time, because it was such a difficult time financially, we were not giving pay raises as far as cost of living increases across the board to our employees. Some of the board members chose then not to take those increases that they were entitled to because we were giving increases to elected officials. This is a very different situation. We're giving increases to everybody in the county. Everybody in the county, except for one bargaining unit, which is yet to come to terms with the county. But everybody else working for the county is receiving a minimum of 2%, and most are receiving a 3% increase this year. Because we sort of led the way with our staff that are not represented, gave a 2% increase, and that's what the board will be receiving. But everybody in the county is getting, like I said, except for one small bargaining unit, everybody in the county is getting an increase. To withhold that from the Board of Supervisors, I think, is folly and foolishness, because we want these jobs to be competitive, as Gene said, from top to bottom. You want good people to run for the Board of Supervisors. If you don't maintain and keep paying them as you pay all your employees a decent salary, you'll get what you pay for. And so I will accept this raise gladly. It's not a huge amount, but what I tell people is don't look at the 2% this year. You have to look at it over time. Because I look at what I was earning when I first came on the board 17 years ago versus what I'm making now, there's a significant difference. And it's that 2%, 3%, those little increases as they add up over time become very significant. But we have to do that because the cost of living goes up as well, too. So anyway, I'm through speaking. If there's anybody other comments, I will accept them. We have a motion by Supervisor Ishida, seconded by Supervisor Cox. Please cast your votes. And the votes are unanimous. Gene, you have one more comment to make.
The county's in good financial shape. Moving forward, you guys have done a great job.
That concludes our general session today. We have some closed items for closed session, Council.
We do, Mr. Chairman, just a few. Several items are off agenda.
Yeah, because we did it on individual.
Item B, E, E, F, and G are being pulled. I do anticipate that there will be a few announcements. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a script I'm supposed to read. The closed session today includes a personnel matter in which the County Counsel's Office has established an ethical wall. I am on the hearing advocate side of the wall, so I personally will not be attending the closed session. Chief Deputy Clinton Sims will attend the closed session in my place and will be the final authority in regard to advising the board in this matter.
Too much Mexican food.
I had too much of the hot sauce.
Here you go. No, it wasn't. They're just red. Let me go first since I'm ready.
Okay, we've got announcements out, Michelle, on, because I know you flip around with the Granicus. We have announcements out on item C and item H. And Jean is announcing out on item J.
Yes.
You just let me know whenever you're ready.
Item J, Jean Rousseau, County Administrative Officer, reporting out of closed session on item J to consider the discipline, dismissal, or release of a public employee. On a motion by Supervisor Cox, seconded by Supervisor Ennis, the board voted unanimously to dismiss a maintenance worker 1.
Matter of item C on the board's closed session agenda, claim filed by Alma M. et al. The board voted to authorize a defense for the County of Tulare and a defense with a reservation of rights to Sheriff Mike Boudreaux. On motion of Supervisor Cox, seconded by Supervisor Ishida on a unanimous vote. And I should have said this is Kathleen Bales, Lane County Council, reporting out of closed session today, Tuesday, September 15th. In the matter of item H in the board's closed session agenda, Crisanto versus County of Tulare et al. The board voted to provide a defense to that matter and to defend all individually named employee defendants with a reservation of rights on the motion of Supervisor Ishida, seconded by Supervisor Vanderpool on a unanimous vote. There are no other announcements.